Hi, welcome to the Introduction to the Practicum Training meeting. I'm Dr. Matt Gibbons. I'm the Director of Clinical Training for the Applied Clinical Program. My email is mgibbons@thechicagoschool.edu. Phone number 213-615-7213. Got a couple of things we want to accomplish today. First is go over the practicum requirements and what you should expect from the training that's actually coming up. And then the second half, we're going to introduce you to the ALCEA program, which is the documentation program that we use to track documents and to help you get involved in the practicum training seminar. Let's see if I can move this slide here. There we go. Okay, so just an overview of the clinical program timeline. The first year to which you're in now is November 2015, so what we're doing now is providing the orientation to the professional development groups. We're also going to learn the ALCEA software, and in the next few months going to start the application process for practicum. The second year you'll actually be doing your practicum, completing it, and beginning the search for the internship process. That actually will start around October of that year. And then in the third year, you'll be completing your internship and then hopefully on to graduation. Talking about some practicum facts. First off, so the practicum training must include a 9 to 12 placement, and this is an on-site placement. And the placement is for 16 to 24 hours per week. No less than 16 hours a week is permitted. And the total number of hours that you want to complete is 800. Now, we also have a waiver program put in place for those of you that have completed a former training during your master's degree, and if that training is actually in the clinical field, you can qualify for a 200-hour waiver. The way that you actually do this is you submit to me the signed hour log from your supervisor that states how many hours that you worked, the types of population that you worked with, the supervision that you received, and most importantly, the direct face-to-face hours. If this is something that would qualify, it would reduce your hour requirement from 800 to 600, so you'd only need to complete 600 total hours. Practicum training must include 40 to 60% of the time spent in direct client contact or direct service hours. Direct service hours is anything that you actually do in front of the client. It obviously includes individual and group therapy, but also any kind of interactions you might have with them via the phone or any kind of assessment training with that. In addition, you need 2 hours of supervision each week, one being a face-to-face session with a licensed psychologist, and then the second could be either an individual or a group. Also, all practicum training sites must be pre-approved by the department, and the applied professional practice must evaluate it to make sure that they are actually doing what they're going to say they're going to do. And also to keep in mind, the practicum training hours are a requirement of the Chicago School and don't count towards licensure. However, when you start to accumulate the internship hours, which is in your second year, that's actually something that will count towards those hours of licensure. Quick comment about working during practicum. It's often very difficult to do so. This is a simple arithmetic problem here. So if you take 40-hour work week plus a 20-hour practicum plus 12 hours of classes and other responsibilities that you have, you're putting yourself at a minimum of 72-hour week, which obviously sounds pretty unrealistic. Those of you that need to work during the practicum really need to think about making some adjustments, because what we find out is the burnout rate is quite high. So if you can begin to make preparations now to what that's going to look like. For those of you that want to work or need to work during the practicum, what works best is a work schedule that is flexible. A lot of the times the practicum and work schedules overlap, and you really need to take the practicum hours as priority. At this point in time, it's time for you to think about the populations that you want to work with. This is really the first step when finding a practicum spot. You know, the populations and the diagnoses and the actual populations you want to work with is going to be important, because this is something that will really base the foundation of your training. Practicum is going to be very rewarding and positive, and it's important that you start this off on the right foot, because a rewarding and positive experience is going to transition into your internship and postdoc and so on far down the line. It also is the starting point of your career. Most sites want you to have some experience in the areas to which you want to work at, especially when you're going into it, and now is the perfect time to get it. It should be noted that you should also be open and flexible when you're doing your training. A lot of times students get into a scenario where they think they don't really want to work with a certain population, but that ends up working out better, because that's actually the route that they want to take. No matter what, it's important to remember that the training will be beneficial and definitely meaningful. The prerequisites for practicum: you must have a cumulative GPA of 3.0. You must be in good standing within the school, and therefore approval from the program faculty and the director of clinical training. Things to keep in mind for practicum: so you can't complete your practicum at your current workplace. Practicums must be unpaid, and they can't be combined with any other hours. For instance, if you are also accruing MFT hours, you can't double dip into the system. You aren't able to accrue both at the same time. Additionally, like we mentioned, you are typically not able to work full-time while on practicum, and practicum is generally during the week. Typically, weekend and evenings aren't available, so it's really difficult, and that's when that flexibility comes with your work schedule, because practicum hours definitely need to take precedence on these. The good news is we have an extensive database of training sites both in Los Angeles and Orange County. A lot of different sites to choose from. In fact, we had more sites than students last year, so you're really able to pinpoint what it is that you would like. Trouble is, if you live outside these counties, you may need to be a little bit more flexible, maybe need to travel a little bit more, so now's the time to start thinking of different options that you might have. Couple tips for you. So practicum is a requirement. You want to make sure you get placed. What I mean by that is you need this to move on to internships. So if it comes between having no practicum and a practicum you're not 100% sold on, you may want to just move forward and take that practicum, because you definitely want to accrue the hours. You want to be flexible when choosing these sites. You might need to be prepared to drive. And you really want to make sure your hours requirement is going to be met. If you don't meet the 600, or for most people 800 hours a year need to, you can't move on to internship. If you don't meet those hours, you need to actually repeat the entire practicum. If something does come up, I encourage you to reach out to your DCT and your advisor as soon as possible. It's also important not to miss any deadlines when you do that. Please check your email every day. I will be sending you out reminders that say documents that are due or things that are upcoming, so you want to make sure you're checking your Chicago School email every day so you don't miss important information. Also, it's important, if you link the two, that you're not relying on Canvas. You want to make sure that you're looking at the Chicago School email. We're going to talk about ALCEA next, and in ALCEA it gives you the opportunity to rank order 10 sites. I'm actually going to go through detailed explanation on how to do that, but just to kind of give you the heads up of what we'll be talking about, you're going to want to pick about 10 or so of these sites. You're going to want to pay special attention to how competitive these sites are, because you don't want to rank all the sites up high that are only taking 1 or 2 students. It's imperative that you read the agency descriptions, because it's your responsibility to make sure that you are meeting the qualifications for these sites. We'll talk about different ways to show how you are qualified to meet these, but the point is that we can't, as DCTs, go through each and every application to make sure you qualify. That's up to you. One last note, the supplemental sites are strictly for individuals who only need limited hours, and it's usually for students that are doing either a second practicum or actually doing 2 practicum trainings in a row. While you're on your practicum, you'll actually be required to be enrolled in the practicum class throughout the practicum experience. This actually goes from summer to summer. The reason this is important is that it actually works with your insurance and your liability coverage, so you want to make sure that you're enrolled in this class, again, from summer to summer. And during the classes, you'll be provided support. You'll talk about the cases in class, you'll present, you'll talk about different consultations, and you'll also write some reports. During the practicum placement, you're actually going to find all your sites needed on ALCEA. In this aspect, we have to talk about the verbal agreement that takes place. So it's a verbal agreement once you accept a placement within this. Breaking this agreement is going to result in a student affairs committee referral. It's basically considered patient abandonment, and it's considered a very serious offense. Once you accept a placement, it is important that you follow through, because a lot of these sites are only accepting 2, 3, 4 students, and they're counting on you for that client coverage. Even though this is a free service that they are getting, these clients are somebody that actually needs help. So it's important that you're able to stand by them and really follow through with your commitment. If for some reason something comes up, I encourage you to reach out to me. It's important to reach out to faculty members if something's good's going on. Also keep in mind, if something comes up during the year, you no longer become eligible, something happens with your academic standing, or some professional comportment piece, you may be removed from the process. It's something to just kind of keep on top of. Lastly, students are required to keep hours logs at practicum. You don't need to turn these in, but you do need to provide proof that you are doing these hours. It's actually for your own benefit too. So if you have hour logs signed off on each week or each month, then the supervisor can't say that you didn't do anything. They actually would have signed off, and therefore you're going to be good to move to the next step. Okay, for practicum preparations, what you're actually going to want to do is get started now. The first thing you'll do is put together a cover letter and a CV. You want to make sure this is really picture perfect, because these are the first couple things that these sites are going to take a look at. You also want to start reaching out for letters of recommendation. You're going to typically need 3 of those, and a lot of times letter writers are notorious for not getting back to people. So that's why we are really encourage you to get out soon and to be able to do this. And you're also going to want to complete a strengths and weaknesses document. This is a document that really kind of pinpoints your expertise and also gives us areas to which you'd like to gain more entertainment, or experience, I should say. You also want to be thorough and detailed on these documents to make sure that we are matching you up with the sites that are the best fit for you. And this is something you'll be able to figure out when you go through ALCEA. You'll be able to look at the sites in detail. ALCEA also has a section called the student detail page, where you'll be able to upload all this information, as well as your personal information, phone number, email address, things like this. We also ask that you add your picture, and we will let you know when the agency list is actually open, which is going to take place somewhere in December. So the important dates to keep in mind, like just stated, the early December date, where I think we're looking at actually right in the middle of the month this year. So ALCEA is going to actually open, and then you can begin looking at sites. By mid-January, you'll want to have all your documentation submitted, and this includes these other documents, the practicum intent form and the professional comportment contract and so on. By mid-January, you're going to want to have your rank order submitted. This is the 7 to 10 sites that you want to be with. We'll talk about more of that in detail when it comes to the ALCEA page. Then by late January, the practicum sites to which you will be approved will be posted by the DCT, and then you can actually begin applying to those sites. In April, the practicum placement notification begins, but by then you will have gone on a few interviews and really begin to narrow down your choices. The actual match date is sometime in April. Our sites don't follow the match notification day, and you're actually able to pick or choose a site if they offer a position to you on the spot, but a lot of the times the sites will be participating in the SCAPT date, which is this universal notification day. Quick note on background checks. Some sites do require background checks, and this is because a lot of the sites that we have with are with federal agencies or with the police departments. This does not, if you've had an issue with background checks or you think something might come up, this doesn't necessarily eliminate you from consideration, but a lot of the sites, if they do require a clean background check, will say something along those lines. So it's really something important you want to pay attention to in the details. If you don't have a background check, it's in your best interest to be perfectly honest about it, because if they're doing a background check, something's going to come up. But a lot of times sites don't need background checks, so that you might be able to not even have to worry about that. If you think it's something you'd like to discuss further or something that might be affecting your application process, I actually encourage you to reach out, because then we can talk more in detail about that. Quick note on professional comportment. We basically want you to conduct yourself in a legal, ethical, and appropriate manner. We follow the code of ethics, and if something comes up that may be of ethical question, you're going to be asked to comment about that. Also, the professional comportment comes up a lot with the sites as well. If you feel like something unethical or inappropriate is going on in your site, this is definitely the time to reach out to me to make sure that we can address this before it gets worse. The worst thing you can do is ignore it and hope that it goes away, because you may be responsible for not saying something as well. A couple examples that might be is for professional comportment is usually involves time off or timeliness. You certainly want to make sure that you're on site when you're going to say you are. You can't really be taking extended vacations that aren't approved by the site ahead of time. And also, if you participate in the work study programs that happen in different countries, this is not an excuse that says you get out of the practicum training. Remember, we need to make sure that our clients have complete coverage, and if you're not there to be able to help them, it's really going to affect their well-being. Also, you want to have a good attitude, you want to dress professionally, and you want to really comply with the sites and the Chicago School requirements. Remember, this is where you actually begin developing relationships with your future employment, so you don't want to burn any bridges. You want to actually make sure everything's positive as you continue. I'm not going to go through too many examples of illegal or inappropriate behavior. I'll give you a couple seconds to take a look in this list. Most important thing is to not leave practicum without prior permission. If you leave, it's considered patient abandonment, and you actually will be given a student affairs committee or a SAC referral, so it's something you do want to do. We want to make sure that the clients are being covered for what it is they have. If you act appropriately, everything should work out fine, but like we previously mentioned, if something comes up, I'd rather you reach out sooner rather than later, then we can actually get that taken care of. Okay, other information you'll need to keep in mind. Ultimately, it's your decision to make sure that you are following the site requirements and ask for clarification if you need it. A lot of this time it's going to be your opportunity to ask a lot of questions to really see if this is going to be a good fit for you. A lot of these times these informations are quick, or the interviews are quick, and they really is the best time to ask a lot of these different questions involving maybe who you're going to be working with, what kind of population you're going to be working with, what's going to be expected of you. So it's really nice to have a list of questions ahead of time that you really want answered. When you're scheduling interviews, it's really important to keep a detailed schedule about what it is that you're doing. A lot of times the interviews, the calls will come one after another, so you want to really keep track of what time you're going where, and you obviously don't want to show up late for places. This obviously gives you a bad impression about what it is that you're doing. Scheduling difficulties is common, especially if you're as busy as you are on the site, but you really want to reach out and have a good idea about what the scheduling requirements are for a lot of the different sites. Most often sites will have a typical training day. For example, every day on Tuesday we meet for didactic training between 9 and 12, so that's one of the days you're required to be there. Basically, you want to see if you can get all that information out ahead of time so that you can pick a spot that best fits into your schedule moving forward. We talked more about student obligations, so I'm not going to get too much details with this. You want to really be open, though, with your learning process. You want to be open to feedback, especially from the supervisors. A lot of great supervisors are a part of our program, so it's really a beneficial aspect for you to be able to learn from them. And I can't stress enough to keep accurate and timely progress notes. Since your supervisor is essentially responsible for your notes, it is their license that's on the line. So you want to make sure that these things are kept timely. And again, if something doesn't fall the way it's supposed to, there's consequences for that, and a lot of the times it's Student Affairs Committee, and we certainly don't want you to be dismissed from the program just for an oversight on note keeping. So make sure that you're keeping on top of this. If you have a difficulty at the practicum placement, please let the DC know as soon as possible. It's something that we can, if we know ahead of time, we can actually get in there and try to remedy the situation that is taking place. Sometimes academic development plans, or ADPs, are created, and this is really for the benefit of the students. It's not just it's not a situation where the site's just allowed to dismiss you. It's actually the plan that's actually been put into place, and a lot of the times these plans can actually remedy the situation. Just a matter of making sure that both sides are familiar about what that is they're getting involved with, and that so both sides can actually contribute to the learning process of both the students and the supervisors. If something happens with the ADP, or it's decided that you don't want to follow that, another Student Affairs Committee referral might be required. This is something that you really want to avoid at all costs, because it could result in dismissal from the program. And if you end up getting dismissed from your practicum placement, you actually have to retake the entire practicum, because a lot of the sites don't allow for just a certain number of hours. They require students there to see the clients from a particular time, like we stated, between 9 and 12 months. So again, please bring to my attention interests or problems as soon as they arise. Okay, so moving on to the ALCEA training. So this is the second half of training of what we're going to talk about. So ALCEA is the database that you're actually going to be using for the next 3 years. So it's in your best interest to become familiar with it. This is actually the place where you find all your paperwork requirements, and when you're on practicum and internship, we provide all that paperwork for you. So we really make it easier to make sure that all the documentation is there. ALCEA is actually where you're going to upload the requirement documents for the Chicago school, and it's a place to store them so you can have them in a permanent student file. You can also verify your submitted forms, and you can also search for practicum sites, which we'll actually get into great detail. So it's important to keep in mind that this process is an electronic process that happens between the student, the supervisor, and the school. Now, for the student, which will be your first step, it's to fill out your own aspect, and then we're going to ask the supervisor to have their information in there as well. So it's going to be your responsibility to make sure the supervisor's information is correctly submitted, because if you don't put their email address in correctly, there's no way for them to get the documentation. So keep in mind that it's a couple-step process, but it's pretty easy once you're able to get the hang of it. Okay, so here's the instructions to get started. The first step is to log in at www.tcspp.app.com. It's right at the top there at the presentation if you're looking at it. So it brings you to this first page here. So the campus to which you're going to want to put is Los Angeles, and then you're going to put in the username and password. Now this is actually going to be the same username and password that you use for your Chicago school, so you're going to want to make sure that you're able to access this. Keep in mind the password is case sensitive and has to be typed exactly as it was sent. If for some reason you're having issues with the password, you're going to want to contact the help desk and ask them to reset your wireless password. What this will do will actually reset your Chicago school password, and often remedies the issue of getting into the system. Typically the help desk is able to do this within 24 hours. However, keep in mind that this is the only route to do this. I do not have access to your username and password, so it's something you have to go through them for this to make sure that you're able to access this system. Once you're able to get into the system, you're going to be brought to this home page. So you'll notice at the top, right under the blue bar where it says the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, you'll notice 3 tabs: Home, Student Detail, and Agency List. Now you can click on each 3 of those to take you to each 3 of those tabs. So if you click on the Forms tab, it brings you to your training agreements, your hours logs and evaluations, and all the other forms that you need attention to. Keep in mind this is under the home page still. The second aspect, or the second tab, is called the Student Detail page. And the Student Detail page, if you see this here in the middle, it brings you to the top. There's a drop-down box to change the cohort. What you're looking for is the Applied Clinical Practicum 2016-2017 tab. What this does is it brings you to different tabs, because remember, you're going to do this once for practicum, then you're going to do it again for internship. So there's going to be multiple tabs there for it. This is the actual section that has all your information. So you're able to fill in your name, your address, your phone number, and this is basically how we are going to keep in contact with you. You'll notice here at the bottom there's a spot for CV, resume, your strengths and weaknesses, your cover letter, your supervisor CV, all these different areas for you to enter these different tabs. It's as simple as clicking on this white piece of paper with yellow pencil there, clicking on it, and you're able to actually upload that cover letter or whatever section you need to upload different sections in there. Once you're able to do that, it'll actually show down here, it'll show the view button where the actual completed document will take place. So it'll be again on the student detail page, and this is how you upload the document right into this section. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, make sure that you're filling in all the student information on the student detail page, and then we move on. This shows you the different areas to which you can fill in. Okay, so the supervisor section is something that you're going to deal with after you get placed. So we're actually going to skip this section, but for future reference, this is how you change the supervisor page. But I'll send you a separate information list on how to do that. The third tab, and the most important tab that we're actually looking at now, is this agency list. So you're going to want to click on this tab, and it's going to bring you a list of sites that are arranged alphabetically. You'll notice here a place called Home is the first one. This is giving you the opportunity to click on each of these sites to take a look at the different agencies and what they actually entail. When you click on the agency, it brings you to the contact information and will give you the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the sites. The site actually here that is brought up is Bella Vita Eating Disorders, so it's giving you the contact information name, the street address, and then either farther down the list it gives you the actual description and details about the site. So you'll notice they have a section about the organization, what the Bella Vita offers, the training opportunities that are available, what an ideal student looks like, and then additional information on site. So you're going to really want to pore over this kind of information to make sure you're getting the training that you want, making sure that it's a good fit for you, or making sure that it's you're a good fit for it. As you scroll down a little bit further, it shows you what application materials you're going to need. Now this is important to keep in mind because some sites are different than others. For instance, if this is a testing site, they might ask you to provide a writing sample based on what it is experience you have. So you take a look and see what it says here, and then based on what you submit, you should. Most sites you have to submit a cover letter, a CV, and so on, and then depending on that. So if you go through the list and decide that this in fact is a site that you would like to be able to apply to, you're going to scroll down to the bottom on the left-hand side and click Add Site Preference Lists. So what this does is it actually adds it to the site of your agency preferences. So you'll begin to populate a list here of the different sites that you would like the permission to apply to. Now keep in mind, we can't let everybody apply to every site because sites are overwhelmed with applications. So if they say we're accepting 3 students, we're going to rank you based on where you rank the site. So for instance, this individual ranked Sylmar Health and Rehab and Weingart Center as their top 2 and was essentially approved for both of those. Now you'll notice that they were declined for the next couple ones, but then was improved to apply to ENKI Health and Research, so they're able to do that. So you'll notice that 2, 3, 4 sites will be approved. Once you're rank ordering these sites, keep in mind that you do want to rank them in order, with 1 being the highest, so on, and then you're able to change this by adjusting the up or down. Once you are approved to do these sites, it will show up as approved, so this means you are actually allowed to go into these different sites and apply to them. You'll actually get a separate email that talks about how to apply to the sites now that you are approved, so that's something that we'll go over in great detail. But for this first section, you're going to want to make sure that you are paying attention to what it is you need to do. So essentially, just to kind of repeat what it is we need for you to do, in this Practicum seminar for the next couple weeks, we really want you to encourage you to think about what it is you specifically want to do. That means what populations you want to work with, what area you feel comfortable driving to, what kind of population, meaning do I want to work with children, do I want to work with adults, do I want to work with a combination of both, do I want to do testing, do I want to do therapy. So all these different questions about what it is that you have to ask for yourself. Additionally, you want to start thinking about putting all these information pieces together, including the CV, the cover letter, and the letters of recommendation. The letters of recommendation are often the thing that holds students back because letter writers sometimes aren't as respondent as they should be, but that's why we're actually reaching out to you earlier rather than later. Keep in mind that you have to conclude all the practicum information before you move on to internships. So once you get all this documentation in, you're able to move on to the next step. I will also add a note to make sure that your dissertation is in process, because remember, this is a building block experience, so you need to finish one before you get on to the next one. So if your practicum is not finished, you can't move on to internship. And if your dissertation is not finished to the spot where it needs to be, you can't move on to the internship application process. So keep in mind to just make sure you're on top of all these different things. Okay, last slide here is my contact information again. Please feel free to reach out as soon as you need to. Remember, reaching out sooner rather than later usually helps remedy some of the issues, but I am available if you need be. Okay, thanks for your attention, and please let me know if you have any questions. Have a good day.